So let me open this talk by highlighting that hepatitis delta virus was first discovered at my university in Turin in the north of Italy by Professor Mario Rizzetto in the late 70s. Hepatitis delta virus is different from the other hepatitis viruses we know. It's defective and it needs the hepatitis B virus to be infective. In fact, as you can see, okay, the envelope of hepatitis delta virus is the same of the hepatitis B virus with the HBs antigen. About the cycle, we can focus on the NTCP, so hepatitis delta virus is able to entry into hepatocytes thanks to NTCP, which is naturally the bile acids transporter, and it's the receptor for both hepatitis delta virus and hepatitis B virus. After the virus enters into hepatocytes where it's replicated, and there's a step which is important for pharmacology, which is the farnesylation, the prenylation. So the large hepatitis delta antigen has to be farnesylated to be integrated with the delta RNA to produce the active virion. The clinical course of this co-infection depends on the timing of delta infection. So, in fact, if we have the simultaneous co-infection of hepatitis B virus and hepatitis delta virus, we could have a reduced likelihood to progress to chronic hepatitis delta virus. Whereas, if we have already hepatitis B virus and then the co-infection with the delta virus, the likelihood to have the progression to chronic hepatitis delta virus is higher, about 80%. So we have to highlight that also hepatitis delta virus is the most severe form of viral hepatitis. As you can see here, we have an increased risk of cirrhosis, hepatic decompensation, hepatocellular carcinoma compared to HBV monoinfection. Consequently, we need effective treatments for hepatitis delta virus. And here, the current drugs used for the treatment and further drugs we can use are reported. And particularly, we can see the different route of administration, so mostly subcutaneous, some intravenously, and one oral. And this is important for clinical pharmacology because hepatitis delta virus replicates only in the liver. So if I have an oral administration, the drug mostly goes directly to the liver thanks to the first pass metabolism. If I have a subcutaneous or an intravenous administration, it's different because the drug goes through the other tissues, then in the systematic circulation, and after on the liver. Now I will give you an overview on all the available drugs. So we can start with interference. In particular, we have to highlight that the only currently treatments available for hepatitis delta virus are PEG interferon alpha and bulevirtide. But the PEG interferon is off-label, so it's not approved by the FDA and EMA, whereas the only approved is bulevirtide. Concerning the PEG interferon alpha, it binds to receptors which are present in different cells, so this could be related to the increased risk of having different side effects. And in particular, we have to highlight that interferon alpha has a reduced response, about 20 to 30%, with a higher risk of post-treatment relapse, and as I told you before, significant adverse events. We can see that about the 80% of patients have adverse events, and someone has serious adverse events. What about the pharmacology? If someone of you could remember, the interleukin-28 single nucleotide polymorphisms were able to influence their response to hepatitis C virus in the past, and also for hepatitis delta virus, there's a study in the literature which analyzed the role of interleukin-28 single nucleotide polymorphisms, but the significance was not reached for the delta virus. Let me speak about the PEG interferon lambda, which could be an option in the future, and it binds to the interferon lambda type 3 receptor, which is particularly expressed on the liver. So it could be related to reduced systemic side effects compared to PEG interferon alpha. And in fact, in this study, we could see that 8 out of 33 patients have hyperbilirubinemia. Okay, this one. Sorry. Higher levels of bilirubinemia. So they have to discontinue the treatment. But the problem remains the same, that as you can see here, the likelihood to achieve a durable virological response is reduced as for PEG interferon alpha. So let's move to entry inhibitors, and obviously we have to speak about bulevirtide, which is able to, which has a structure similar to the pre-S1 HBs antigen region. So it's able to block the NTCP, which is the hepatitis delta virus receptor and the bile acids transporter, as I told you before. And so the two viruses cannot enter into hepatocytes. Bulevirtide was approved in 2020 at the dosage of 2 milligrams per day subcutaneously, and optimal duration is unknown. So patients are still treated currently. Okay, in this review, Professor Lampertico analyzed the different bulevirtide dosages, so 2 milligrams, 10 milligrams, PEG interferon alone, or bulevirtide at different dosages together with the PEG interferon, and they evaluated the influence of the different drugs and dosages to the virological response in terms of reduction of hepatitis delta virus RNA of at least 2 logarithms or undetectable delta RNA levels. In terms of biochemical response, so reduction, normalization of hepatic transaminase, and the combined response of virological and biochemical response. And the conclusion is that the combination of bulevirtide together with the PEG interferon resulted in a more profound decline of delta virus RNA, regardless the bulevirtide dose. But the toxicity remained the same with the PEG interferon use. Concerning the toxicity of bulevirtide, we can see that at 2 milligrams we have no severe adverse events, and for renal and hepatic impairments, we have not to modify the drug dosage. Due to the link of bulevirtide to NTCP, the first thought was that toxicity related to the lipids complex could be present, but this study shows that we have an increase in HDL, cholesterol, or total bile acids, but this increasing is not clinically relevant. What about bulevirtide and pharmacogenetics? This study reports that NTCP polymorphisms are able to influence the clinical outcome, and in particular, the authors evaluated the NTCP genetic variants, and the NTCP is encoded by the SLC10A1 gene, and these SNP are able to influence both the hepatitis delta virus RNA and the early response to bulevirtide. But I will show you in my next presentation that these SNPs are also able to influence bulevirtide concentrations. What about bulevirtide concentrations? As we can see here, we have a huge variability between the single dose and the steady state. Why this? This could probably due to that after the first injection, NTCP is able to going to saturated NTCP, and then bulevirtide plasma exposure increases. And so we have this high variability. Also, other factors could influence bulevirtide plasma exposure, like body weight, cirrhosis, and the female sex. What about drug-drug interactions? Some drugs have to be avoided because bulevirtide is able to inhibit OATP1B1 and B3, and it's transported by NTCP. So this is an example for some substrates, OATP1B1 and cytochrome 3A4 substrates, so with the pravastatin and midazolam, and we can see that this study suggests that OATP1B1 and the cytochrome 3 substrate may be safely used with bulevirtide, but if we have high statin dose, as a cardiologist required, as Professor Bolfito yesterday told, we have to be careful. So let's move to other further probably drug we can use. Another entry inhibitor is the HH003, which is a human monoclonal antibody able to recognize the pre-S1 domain of HBs antigen. And in this study with 9 patients, they reported that this drug significantly decreases the delta RNA and the hepatic transaminase with a low incidence of adverse events. And this drug received the breakthrough therapy designation in November 2024. Another important entry inhibitor is tobevibart, another monoclonal antibody, which is able to bind to the antigen loop of HBs antigen, and this is an important drug because it's a pangenotypic. It is able to recognize all the hepatitis delta virus genotypes as reported here in this figure. Okay. In this drug, the authors evaluated tobevibart alone and tobevibart plus elebsiran, which is a small interfering RNA. I will show you in the next slide its characteristics. And in this study, the authors reported that this dosage was well tolerated in cirrhotic participants with mild hepatic impairment, and no dose adjustment is required. So with a subcutaneous dose of tobevibart 300 milligram monotherapy or together with elebsiran at 200 milligram. So now we will talk about the small interference-based therapy, the small interference RNA, which are double-stranded RNA able to silence some mRNA. And in this case, elebsiran is an N-acetylgalactosamine, so it's able to enter particularly in the liver, and it is able to silence the mRNA, which leads to HBs antigen production. Also in this case, we suggest a higher rate of virological response and ALT normalization without adverse events with these two drugs. These are ongoing studies which start in 2025. We are participating to this study. And we have 3 arms evaluating the efficacy and safety of tobevibart and elebsiran in the countries where bulevirtide is not available. The second arm comparing elebsiran and tobevibart in patients who have not reached an adequate viral suppression with bulevirtide, and the third arm comparing these 2 drugs with bulevirtide. Prenylation inhibitor, lonafarnib, is able to inhibit the farnesyl transferase enzyme, which I told you is important to prepare to produce the large delta antigen. And this is important for the liver bulk loop, a new work for you. Lonafarnib could be boosted with ritonavir. And this is important because this therapy could be completely oral. Although this study showed that the maximal efficacy we have when we use together the oral therapy, so lonafarnib and ritonavir, plus PEG interferon, the light blue. In this study of modeling, authors suggested that we have to reach lonafarnib concentration higher than about 5 nanogram per milliliter in plasma in order to have the 99% efficacy in blocking hepatitis delta virus production. But we can reach this 5 nanogram if we use a dose of 600 milligram BYD. But the problem is this, that at 200 milligram of lonafarnib, a poor gastrointestinal tolerability was suggested, so it's impossible to use a 600 milligram. Okay? The last group, the nucleic acid polymers are small oligonucleotides which are able to recognize lipids and proteins, and they are able to inhibit the entry, the assembly, and the release of the hepatitis B virus, so with a consequence on the Delta virus. And also in this case, we have promising results, but the problem is that 63 weeks of treatment, intravenous weekly, and together with the PEG interferon, so we have to decide which is better. So, in conclusion, this could be some open questions for clinical pharmacology. So, the right duration timing for the bulevirtide and then 2 or 10 milligram, the role of pharmacogenetics, the DDIs for the use of ritonavir with the lonafarnib, co-infected patients, the role of TDM, obviously, and monotherapy versus drug combination. So, it's a pharmacological thing, so it's difficult. So I would like to thank all the organizers, all my colleagues, and all of you for your attention.